Another meeting back to back with this one. And so I just want to, good afternoon and thank you. Thank you for joining us today. This is a special meeting with the Committee of Education Committee. We are here to present today the Syracuse City School District transition program to bring our children, our students back to the buildings, and also to learn a little bit about the federal aid impact and their priorities and choices to start working, with these funds as they come. So with that said, I welcome all of the city councilors, city employees. I see commissioners of education with us today. Thank you for joining us. This is great. And with that said, Jaime, you have the floor. Take us through this. Jaime, you're muted.
For giving me,
There.
I was gonna say thank you for giving me time to correct my mistake and unmute myself. It's been a year and a month using Zoom, and we're still making the same mistakes. So again, thank you very much, Councilor Paniagua, and all members of the Common Council, and President Sergio Wicks and Commissioner Bodie for joining us this afternoon. Today, we're going to share with you information that we share with the board, with the parents, and with other stakeholders regarding the increasing in-person instruction in the Syracuse City School District. We're planning in bringing kids next week, increasing from 2 to 5 days at the elementary level, from 2 to 4 days at the middle school level, and from 1 to 2. And hopefully we're going to be working to increase that to 3 or 4 days at the high school level. We have been working very hard to support our kids, to support our families, and Chief Kelly is going to be doing that presentation. Then after that, we're very thankful for the work that our parents, our staff have done advocating for more funding for the Syracuse City School District. So we are going to see an increase of $18 million in foundation aid. That is part of the fiscal equity case that had been in place for many years in New York State. We're also, I know that it was put in there $128 million from ARPA. It is not going to be 128, it's 109, because the state is going to be taking some of that money, but we're very thankful that the Syracuse City School District will be receiving some extra funding to support our students, support our staff, and support our families. And Chief Slack is going to do that presentation, and then we will give you the opportunity to ask any questions for us. So, Chief Kelly. Laura?
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to check. Let me share my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you all able to see that the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let me see if I can get it in presentation zone or mode. Okay, again, good afternoon, everyone. As the superintendent mentioned, we are increasing in-person instruction for our students. We are very excited about this. It has been almost 13 entire months since school shifted dramatically last March, and we are eager to see our students back in school. We are proposing a target return date of April the 12th. We are still on track to meet that target. And even as we continue to receive new guidance, we believe that we'll be able to have thousands more students in next week. The district has taken numerous actions to prepare for more children to be in our schools. We've arranged classroom furniture to support social distancing. We've secured an additional 15,000 desk partitions in addition to the 12,000 that are already in schools. We've ordered another 15,000, I'm sorry, I just got a request to annotate something. I'm not used to this WebEx chat feature. 15,000 additional face shields in addition to the 12,000 that we currently have in stock. We've gotten another over 33,000 children's masks and 49,000 adult masks. We've ordered another 270 wrist and forehead thermometers to supplement what we already have in stock. We've got floor decals and signage posted all in our schools, and our water fillers are being installed. And we have secured and actually installed, rather, office partitions in all of our schools. We've also installed air purifiers in all of our classrooms. The heating, ventilation, and air conditioning maintenance has changed as a result of COVID. We've increased our coil diffuser and filtration cleaning schedules. The Public Health Emergency Communicable Disease Protocols, or Pandemic Response Plan, has been approved and is by the board, is in place. And it also requires a 2-week supply of PPE to be distributed to each of our schools. Our Human Resources Department launched a SCSD Cares About Your Mental Health campaign with a number of different resources for our staff to be able to execute and use in order to support them throughout this transition to more in-person instruction. And we have social emotional support plans, lessons, and resources for all of our students that are outlined for the final marking period of the school year. The superintendent has also solicited input and into the planning and sought feedback on our proposals beginning in February. We've met with union presidents and talked specifically with the teachers union and the administrators union. We've convened the building principals to get their thoughts and ideas. We've held a parent feedback session and a co-video chat. We had over 600 participants who were able to also engage in live streaming for that, so that the entire community could actually participate. And we had our staff and families in that co-video chat on Facebook Live engaged in question and answers. The superintendent convened the Superintendent Teacher Advisory Committee that included the STA president and vice president. We incorporated the feedback from our teachers unions surveys that were conducted into our proposals. The superintendent met with the student cabinet to get their thoughts and opinions about what we needed to do to make sure we were ready. And we also have received nearly 12,000 responses to our survey that we sent out to families at the beginning of March. So as the superintendent mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we are bringing our elementary students back 5 days a week. We'll be maintaining our physical distance of 3 feet between students and classrooms, and we'll keep our assigned seatings and use the partitions. The student time will be 8 to 2. We will be keeping that time for our elementary grades. There will be some exceptions for our 2 schools that have extended learning time at the elementary grades, Franklin and H.W. Smith. And our outreach will continue to take place for all of our remote learners and the students who are in person, who are tiers 2 and 3. And we will do that before school and after school each day. To support our pre-K-5 learners who are working from home still, we'll be utilizing a balance of virtual station rotation and assigning fully remote teachers to fully remote sections. We have different degrees of which we have numbers of students requesting to come in versus stay at home. And so those decisions have been made at a school by school level and grade level by grade level decision. So we will also be continuing with our WCNY programming and the on-demand viewing for our students who are learning at home and for those in-person learners who want to review a lesson in the evening when they're home. We will continue supporting our elementary virtual learners with synchronous instruction. We'll have Seesaw on our computer platforms. We'll have paper packets, the evening academic support programs for grades K through 2, virtual after-school programming, and other opportunities that are available at different schools. That synchronous instruction will continue 5 days a week for our remote learners, except for our special area instruction, and we'll have those videos on our Seesaw computer platform for everyone to be able to access. Remote learners will also be able to receive 5-day meal kits on Wednesdays so that we can continue to support our families. Our programs at Oasis and McCarthy at elementary grades will attend 5 days a week as well. At our middle school, we have higher numbers of students who are choosing to engage in fully remote instruction for the remainder of the school year. We'll be able to maintain our Wednesday professional development and technical assistance day, and that also allows our staff to be able to engage in outreach for our remote learners. The student time for in-person instruction will be from 8:45 to 12:45 with remote hours of approximately 150 to 340. Some of that shifts a bit depending on the transportation time home. The teacher times are from 8:40 to 3:40. Again, we have some schools with some exceptions because of their extended learning time. We'll be maintaining physical distance of 3 feet between students with assigned seating and the use of the barriers. And remote learners will continue with their current synchronous learning schedule, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And again, meal kits will be available for our fully remote learners. At the high school level, we are going to be bringing back students on a 2-day in-person instruction schedule. We have the highest number of students at the high school level who are selecting to engage in full remote instruction for the remainder of the year. Students would be coming in on a Monday and Thursday or a Tuesday and Friday schedule. The students who are currently attending 4 days a week are special education students, and our English as a new language students would retain their 4-day-a-week schedule. We will have students remaining in sections with their current peers and teachers for the 2 days of in-person instruction, where our goal has been to minimize schedule and teacher changes at all levels. The student time will remain from 8:45 to 12:45 in person, and the remote hours will be from 1:50 to 4:40. Teachers' times are staggered depending on the start time of their day so that they can support the remote learners at the end of the day. Just like at the elementary and middle grades, we'll be maintaining physical distance of 3 feet between students with assigned seating and barriers to ensure everyone is safe. Our remote learners will continue with their current synchronous schedule on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And just like at the middle level, the Wednesdays will be used for technical assistance and for outreach for our remote learners. And meal kits will be made available for our fully remote learners at the high school level as well. Are there any questions?
Do you want to take questions now or all after you've presented the whole Jaime?
I have a question relative to the schedule, if I can ask it now.
Oh, go right ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Just for, I know personally, and then just talking to a few other parents, there was concerns about children that, like if you have multiple children and like one in middle school, one in elementary school, and one in high school, and the dismissal times and the arrival times are not the same. Are any of the schools offering some accommodations for parents?
Superintendent, I believe you're muted.
He can speak.
Sorry.
Aye.
We will be looking at that, Councilor Allen. We are still following the same schedule that we had during the hybrid models, but we have not planned in providing after-school daycare for the kids. So
Okay.
we'll look into it.
Okay. Yeah,
That's why.
I'm a little...
And again, that's why we kept the middle schools and the high school kids with the regular schedule, so they can be dismissed early. They can go home because we knew that some of them were taking care of their siblings during the day.
Right. Yep. I kind of figured that. I'm concerned. Like I said, personally, I have 3 that I drop off, and somebody's definitely getting picked up late, and somebody's definitely getting dropped off early. So it's just a concern that I had, and a few other people, parents that I spoke with. But just like any other situation, I guess we'll adjust and make it work.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, Superintendent, maybe I missed it, but I haven't heard anything about kids with the developmental issues. What's the accommodation for them?
We are providing services for kids with developmental issues already. Those kids with high need for special ed services, or even the E&L students, they're already attending school 4 days a week. So at the elementary level, now instead of 4, they will be in 5 days a week.
Okay, so it's pretty much going to follow the same schedule that all the students are following.
Yes.
Okay, now with the risks of COVID in place, how is the bathroom, considering the traffic is going to increase, and considering that the bathroom traffic is going to be higher than other areas? I haven't heard anything as well about how the bathroom are going to be managed. Is there a special consideration to that as well?
We will continue to clean the facilities on a daily basis. We are encouraging for the kids at the primary level that they have bathrooms in the classroom, to use those in the classrooms. And the schools are working on a developing plan on how the kids are going to be going to the bathroom, to the cafeteria, and to the special, so we don't have a lot of traffic in the hallways, making sure that we're keeping the social distance in the hallways also.
Okay.
Is the number of students in the schools, in the buildings, is it based on the capacity you have to keep them separated enough when you're in the cafeteria and those, common spaces?
The number of kids that are going to be in classrooms are based on the capacity, keeping in mind the 3 feet that we need to keep between the students. So we are not going to be putting more kids than what we are allowed by the capacity from the county and the CDC. We're still waiting for guidance that is supposed to come from the state health department. That guidance was supposed to be out this week, and the latest date that we have received, that I received, is that will be out on Monday, but we are planning in having the kids back in the schools on Monday.
So does it mean that at any given time, if there are more children than capacity, you would have to turn some children away from coming?
Some of the kids, it will be similar to what some of the other districts are doing. I mean, we're giving priority to the kids that were already doing hybrid, combining the cohort A and the cohort B. And then we have taken kids that the parents have said, I'm ready. I feel comfortable with my child going to school. So kids that were full-time remote, we are integrating those kids into the cohorts.
So, Superintendent, are you all set, Penny Hour?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, we'll ask questions as we go.
So, Superintendent, so is it correct to assume that all the administrators and teachers are all vaccinated?
No, that is not correct to assume. They all have been given the opportunity to be vaccinated. A lot of them are vaccinated. I will say at least 90%, but I can't tell you because we are not allowed to ask them whether they have been vaccinated or not. And they have the option of getting the vaccine or not.
So you will never know if they got the vaccine or no?
I will not know. I asked the county if they have numbers for the city school district, and they said they do not have all the data because some people are being vaccinated with the county, some people are going to the drugstore, some people are going to the private doctors, some people are going to the state fair. So there isn't, the only agency is the state health department, but I don't have a number. But I can tell you that, every time that we get an opportunity to have people vaccinated, like next door, Hutchins had our opportunity. We made phone calls. Went around, and people are already saying, I'm already vaccinated, I'm okay. Or I have had some people that said, I'm not interested in being vaccinated right now.
Okay. So,
about that?
go ahead.
So as a superintendent, what's your response to that? Because it's different. It's different, superintendent, outside, but when you start to mess with everybody's children, it's a problem. When you pose risk to, especially the children, that in itself is it puts, I don't know. What was your response to that?
We have been working. If people are not vaccinated and if they want to be exempt, or if they want to remain working from home, we got to have documentation, whether it's for medical reasons, and that information is through our health services department. And again, I don't have access to that information because of HIPAA and all that. But I mean, we have encouraged everyone to be vaccinated. But by law, I cannot discriminate with people, whether they're vaccinated or not.
Wow.
Understood. And for me, and I'm not putting you on a spot, superintendent, but I think just to be transparent, I think you have one of the toughest job around, right? And this is to say that, I understand the legal requirement and all of the freedom of choice that is involved with all of this. But at the same time, as a superintendent that is in charge of 21,000 students, and their health is in your hand as well. As much as there is legal requirement to abide by, you also have to answer to the parents. And in this sense, sending children into a classroom where certain adults are not vaccinated, doesn't that in some way, superintendent, contradict what we are trying to do here?
But it's not only the vaccination, it's also taking into consideration the other guidelines from the CDC. Is having the mask, is having the barriers, even though that they said that those are not required. We're putting those barriers in every classroom. We're putting those barriers in the cafeteria, and that we are the only school district in Central New York with air purifiers in the classroom. The board made a commitment, I made a commitment, and that we wanted to make sure that our students and our staff were safe.
Mhm.
Okay, to stop there, Councilor Penny, I think, superintendent, with those that have chosen, which is absolutely their right not to get a vaccination, I think as a school you should develop some kind of policy where there should be a certain way this is handled. Because I don't know if I feel a lot of parents out there that go into pandemic, they were a little bit edgy sending their kids back to schools and sending them back a year later with no certainty and confidence in making sure that their child is safe. As a parent myself, I can feel for them, and that I think I encourage you to pay special attention to that.
And I have, but again, that's why we also have given parents the opportunity, the choice to either, if they don't feel comfortable, that they can keep the kids doing the remote instruction, or if they feel comfortable, to send the kids to school. I hear you, Chancellor. I hear what you're saying.
Thank you, Jaime.
You're
I
welcome.
just have one, before we move into the next topic, we have one quick question. You mentioned that the partitions, you have 12,000 and you are requesting for another 15. Are those enough, or are you going to need more?
No, those are enough.
Is that just for the little kids, or is it for everybody?
No, it's in all the classroom. We had those 12,000 when we opened the school year in October. Those were similar to this. They were in every classroom in October. Now we order new ones that are going to be again used in classroom and cafeterias, libraries, art, music, whatever the kids are. We will have those partitions, those barriers.
So you would be all set with that number. It seemed like
Yes.
it seemed to me like you needed more.
No, yes, we are. Again, we have we will have about 12,000 kids attending school, okay? And again, we are taking that as an extra precaution. If you recall, the CDC is saying that those partitions, those barriers are not necessary either. So,
Mhm. Oh, okay.
but again, taking into consideration the health and safety of our student staff, the board and I, we made a commitment that we were going to put those barriers in the classrooms.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you want to move on to the next presentation.
The next presentation is to talk about the federal funding update. And now that the state budget was also approved, Suzanne Slack is going to do a quick presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent. Just give me a moment to share my screen. And can you see the screen okay? Do you see a slide?
Yes.
Okay. And you can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to apologize to the board members because we have not presented this information to the board yet. It just came out late Tuesday night. So I give you my sincere apology, but you will have an in-depth presentation on Wednesday. What I'm going to do tonight is just do a brief overview of the federal funding to try and clarify for everybody how this works. I'm not prepared to speak in depth about the state funding at this point. I do need to dig into the requirements for that a little bit more. So that information will be available next week. So first, at a very high level, I wanted to talk about how the federal stimulus funds are processed, because everybody is asking, why did Senator Schumer say Syracuse City School District is getting $128 million and now you're telling me something else? So I thought this would be helpful to understand. When the federal funds for COVID are signed into law, they're then allocated to the states based typically on the Title I allocation. And Title I is a source of federal funding that drives funds to the poorest students in poorest communities. So it has an equity component initially built into how the federal funds are allocated to each of the states. So when New York State receives an allocation of funding, it goes into one of two buckets that I'll talk about in more detail in a minute, but essentially it either goes through the state education department or through the governor's office. So we're going to see that in these three funds as we move forward. And then typically there is a minimum that's put on these funds, and the federal government says to the state, a minimum of 90% of the funds we make available after certain deductions has to be allocated to local educational agencies. So that includes school districts, charter schools, non-public schools, and higher ed institutions. In some cases, it may also include child care providers. I'm not aware of those with this particular bucket of funding, but it does sometimes happen. And then there's this odd thing about a time lag with this type of funding. And I thought if I gave you an example of what happened last year, it would give you an idea of how the funding actually flows. So last year, in March of 2020, the federal government approved the CARES bill immediately. I think it was on like the 13th of March. And so when that funding was provided to the state had to put together a request for proposal that they send out to all the school districts, and they say, you need to apply for this money and tell us what you're going to use the money for. So that came out in the summer. We submitted our application, and the state came back and said, oh, we made a mistake. Some of the rules changed. We're going to give you a new request for proposal. You have to do a new application, and that came out in the fall. So we applied for the funding, and it took until January of 2021, just a few months ago, for the money to actually, or for the funds to actually be awarded to us. So here we are 10 months later, 11 months later, and we're already spending the money. We're hopeful that we're going to get the award, and we don't actually find out from the state that it's been approved until January. So we immediately started to submit for reimbursement and did receive the first payment just a few months ago here in February. And I share all that with you because as we go through the budget process over the next few months, Cash flow is a pretty important part of what we work on with our revenue anticipation note. Sometimes these types of funding delays, even though there's more money coming, these funding delays can put us in a cash crunch situation. Any questions on that? Okay. So then I wanted to kind of clarify for you, because you're hearing all of these mixed messages. There are really 3 buckets of funding coming from the federal government, and it's a total for the Syracuse City School District of about $173 million over 3 to possibly 4 years. And I'm going to walk you through that. So the first portion of funding was the CARES money that was $16.1 million allocated to Syracuse. And this was to backfill state aid funding reductions in last school year. So last March, when the final state budget came out, they reduced our state aid by $16.1 million and then replaced it with this CARES funding because the funding source allowed for that. So essentially, we didn't make a lot of changes in our operations. We didn't add new things. We simply shifted which bucket certain expenses were being paid for with the CARES funding. Then in December of 2020, kind of the last thing that happened under the Trump administration was the approval of CRRSA, the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. This provided $48 million to the Syracuse City School District. And this was released in terms of the application process from the feds to the state in December. We have been told by state ed that we will get the RFP at the end of April and that we should have an award amount by June. So this $48 million is good over a couple of year span. We are including use of some of it in our upcoming school budget that we'll be talking about in a few weeks. And then lastly is the ARPA money, or the American Rescue Plan Act. This is $109 million for the Syracuse School District. Again, we've heard from the state that it will, we will get the request for proposal at the end of April. Hopefully we'll have an idea of the award come June, and then we would be able to commence with spending those funds. So each of these different stimulus funds follow the ESSER or GEAR guidelines. And again, the ESSER is what goes through the New York State Education Commission, and the GEAR portion goes through the Governor's Emergency Education Relief Fund. So the last portion of funding here, the ARPA, doesn't have a GEAR component. It only has funding going straight through the state education department. So we would be following all of their guidelines for the use of that money. So I thought it would be helpful to talk about these in terms of a timeline. So the CARES money expires. If you don't spend it, you don't get it by September of 22. We will have spent all of that money, I think, by June. That's our plan. There may be a little bit that trickles over to July and August of this summer, but essentially that entire amount will have been spent when we close out the books for last school year, or for the current school year. The CRRSA funds, which is the $48 million that was just approved in December, those funds expire in September of 2023, and so do the ARPA funds, the $109 million. There is a possibility that there'll be a one-year no-cost extension offered on the ARPA funds, which would give us until September of 24 to spend that money. So when we think about what we want to use these funds for, it's really important that we understand the timeline of it. So for example, if we wanted to pay for a summer school program with these funds, maybe we could do it for 2 summers, but if it's extended, then maybe we could use it for 3 summers. So that's why the timeline is important for us to understand. So down here at the bottom, I tried to show you visually what we think will happen with the funding. Again, I think we'll use all of this CARES money at least by the end of the summer. Then the second $48 million pot of money would be mostly used in next year's budget, with a little bit left over that would be used in the subsequent year. And then the ARPA funding, until we know exactly the full timeline, It may end here in September of 23, or it may end in September of 24. It'll take us a little bit longer to parse out how those funds will be spent. So on March 13th, the federal stimulus funds for CARES, as I said, were made available through the end of September. Our plan would be to use all of that by this June. And essentially what we had budgeted for was to mostly use that to cover salaries and benefits for our AIS services for kids, literacy services, and social workers. There was a contract that we were able to transition over to this funding source, some of our instructional supply purchases, and then part of the funding that is released by the federal and state government has an apportionment for non-public schools. So there was a modification made to CARES. So a little under $300,000 was set aside for our non-public schools in the city of Syracuse. And on the CURSA funding, I thought it would be helpful for you to know what the funds can or cannot be used for. So with these funds, they can be spent to coordinate with other entities such as the city or the county to work together to slow the spread of COVID-19 in our larger community. These funds can be used to provide resources to school principals for whatever they need to make sure that they're able to provide education in a safe environment. Anything relative to preparing for a pandemic. So if we wanted to use this money to invest in being ready to immediately overnight have everybody go to remote learning and remote instruction, you could do that. To address needs of students. So this includes the mental health component that folks are talking about. You can use this money to train people on the proper use of PPE. So for example, posters and reminders of how to wear a mask and to frequently wash your hands. For buying any of the necessary PPE, disinfectants, or cleaning equipment. Any expenses relative to hybrid and remote learning for hardware, software, and connectivity. Services to provide support for student mental health. After school and summer school programs. And then addressing learning loss, which is a word you're hearing a lot now in terms of the pandemic. What is the learning loss? So they provided a whole list of what they call evidence-based approaches to ensure that we're able to help students overcome any learning loss that they may have incurred. And then these funds can be used for repairs to school facilities. And it specifically calls out anything to improve air quality or ventilation. And so the third bucket, was there a question?
Just a quick question. Is the social emotional plans that were mentioning before, are they under the student mental health support, or is this different?
Yes.
There, okay.
And that's part of the collaboration that we also have with the county, the multi-tier support services for our families, the team that we have identified in every building, lessons that we have recorded, training that we're going to be doing with our kids when they return next week. So all that is included in there.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so then on the ARPA funds, it includes all those categories we just talked about under the CURSA funding, but I kind of colored in gray here the additional things that we found in the requirements for the ARPA funding. So what they're saying is whatever pot of money that you're getting under this legislation, a minimum of 20% of it has to be tied to addressing learning loss. So the reason I make that, I'm stressing that is not that we would be worried that we wouldn't spend at least 20% on that, but they're going to come back and audit that. So they're going to say, we said that summer learning enrichment is an evidence-based intervention. How did you use that to address learning loss? So it'll be something that they monitor and actually come in and audit to ensure that we've complied with that. They also said these funds could be used for tracking attendance because as time has marched on, districts are reporting difficulty with getting students to ensure they're attending, whether it's remote or hybrid. So any efforts that we put forth to improve attendance could be funded through these funds. They specifically called out indoor air quality and mechanicals in school buildings. And I think nationwide. They're acknowledging that many schools are very old and may need mechanical upgrades, and that would allow folks to use the funds for that purpose. They have a category of safe return to in-person learning, which has a whole list of regulations beneath it. They also said these funds could be used for paying for the delivery of meals and technology, which is something we've struggled with until the state budget was just recently released. They added on to the mental health supports component a full service community school, again, behind the idea that a school is there to serve the community that is in that general area. We have community schools here in our school district, but it would be if you wanted to add a health center, community health center, or family engagement rooms or things like that for that community schools initiative. They also stressed parent and family assistance to help parents effectively support their students. So if kids are choosing to be remote learners going forward, we would have these funds available to help provide parents with what they need to be successful with their children learning from home. And then there is a new term and a new requirement called maintenance of equity. So I think all of you are probably somewhat familiar with maintenance of effort, which we have it, you have it, the state has it. And what that is if there is a release of funds, there could be a maintenance of effort where you have to hold harmless at a minimum level of contribution. Maintenance of equity goes back to how much money you spend per pupil based on pupil demographics. So there's this new requirement coming out that will have, I think I saw 8 different demographics listed. And if we spend, let's say $100 per pupil on a special needs student that's from high poverty this year, next year, as long as the ARPA funds are available, we have to at least spend that same $100 on that student if their demographics haven't changed. So that adds a quite a significant compliance component to the use of these funds. And that is all I had. I am happy to answer questions to the best of my ability.
So I just have one question. So you said these monies are coming potentially in a 3-4 year span, right? So
Yes.
do they tell you what do you have per year, or is that based on the proposal you'll send?
Yes, you are absolutely correct. That will be based on the proposal that we submit. And then it will have some flexibility in the timing. So typically with federal funds, they're on a different fiscal year than what we are. So they allow a 12-month period to maybe span 14 months.
Okay.
So you could
And-
spend it all up front and be out of money next year, or you could time it over that time frame.
And this is based on the budget proposal that we have to submit to the Board of Education and get their approval first before we can access that money. So
Thank you.
just for the president and the commissioners to know that we're not expending money without permission.
So from the buckets of money that that you were explaining to us, there's these three buckets, right? The first two that you were talking about, those seem to be more restricted in their use. If you didn't use all of it for the purpose and intention that they're being given, right? Is there any way you can like propose to utilize it in any other way? And no.
No, so we can spend it in accordance with their regulations, and they have to check off and say, yes, your summer school proposal is approved. Because we might submit a summer school proposal and they say, no, that's horrible. You can't do that. So you have to meet, one, the compliance requirements, but then two, you also have to have approval.
Okay. Are there any other questions from any of the other counselors or anyone in the call?
I bored you all to tears, I'm sorry.
No, not really.
I don't know if I missed it. I don't know if I missed it, Suzanne. Have you guys talked much about, I know the state legislature just put the foundation aid back in. You guys been talking about how that's going to factor in?
So, great question, Joe. On Tuesday night, the state finalized their budget, and as a part of that, they put in a foundation aid increase this year for the school district, as well as the legislation that will do the full phase-in of foundation aid by 2023, so over 3 years. That is significant. This is something that was proposed under Governor Spitzer back in 2007, and here we are about 14 years later, seeing it come to fruition. So we're grateful for that. It's going to have a huge impact. We had asked the state for an additional $12.7 million this year. In the final proposal that came out Tuesday night, they actually gave us over 18 million. So it's a little bit more money than what we had asked for this coming year. And then those next 2 years, we'll have a gradual increase as well.
You know, I didn't, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to ask, so like the foundation aid specifically goes to the issue of equity, right? So it'll be more focused on urban school districts, right? Is that correct? The money be distributed throughout different school districts, or will a greater portion go to urban places like Syracuse and Rochester, et cetera?
Urban district will get a larger amount of money, but it will get to all the district. You probably heard North Syracuse yesterday, they were getting some extra money too. So we're just hoping that this is not going to be the same picture that happened when Spitzer was the governor, that we got the money 1 year and the following year, you know,
They took it away.
Was saying, well, we're poor again. So we will continue to advocate for money for our kids. But it's great.
It is fantastic. The one kind of weird thing about it, Joe, is that we were already at about a little over 80% of full phase-in. Other districts that are more wealthy were really only maybe at 60% or 50%. So they're going to see a bigger jump in terms of percent than we are, but certainly more funding does go to the large urban districts.
Are you all set, Joe? Yeah. The one thing that I may have missed it, but I don't think I heard anything about transportation. Is that part of it? Is this included in?
So that's a good question as well. Transportation will be funded under the New York State funding process. So there's a separate transportation aid included in the budget that was just approved Tuesday night. The state approved that they will pay the transportation aid for last year during the closure when we weren't transporting kids, but we were transporting things, as well as any expense we incurred this year to do the same thing. So they have made that promise for the 2 years. And then going forward, they left the transportation aid in because that was something the governor was looking to reduce.
Okay, are there any more questions from any of the people in the call? Counselors or anyone from the city?
Okay, thank you very much.
Hearing none, thank you. I want to thank you, Superintendent and Suzanne, for bringing this great presentation. And I am totally and Kelly, right? From before.
Yeah.
Yes, I was losing her name. So thank you so very much. This was very informational and it helps a lot. Thank you, because this way when we go out in the communities, then we're well informed as well to be able to talk to our constituents. If anything else, then we'll call you and ask more questions.
No problem. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share this information with you. We're going to go now to the board and present all these numbers in more details, and then we'll be back to do our budget presentation to the Common Council. I believe is April 29th. So
yeah,
thank you very
this
much.
Definitely helps us, you know, when you come
Yeah.
with a budget presentation, it's, you know, we're already heading that way. So thank you. I really do appreciate this.
You're welcome.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks.